Patch 9.2 is live in Raid Shadow Legends, and we're going to take a look at all the changes that have happened behind the scenes. We're going to look at what they've said has come with this update, which is kind of like a mini kind of filler update. I feel like they're just waiting for the next big thing that they're going to drop. And we're also going to look at the reworked mythicals. I've had a lot of questions being asked to me. Are the modified multipliers going to make you pull these champions out of the vault if you have them? Although not many people have mythical champions, so it is going to be whether or not you've managed to get this is the one mythical that you have got. But we're going to look at all those, we're going to compare it in this video, and then we're going to basically look at every little thing that may not have been announced in this update. So the way that I structure these videos is I normally do a breakdown of their official patch notes. We are going to have a look at what they've changed in the 3 mythical champions as well, to see whether or not they've kind of fixed the problems that those mythical champions have. And then we have a second portion where we look at the actual numbers, and I've got a bit of a breakdown and a comparison to see how much stronger are these champions going to hit. So update 9.2, the primary thing we have got in this update is this new profile that has been added to the game. We can see it a little bit in the highlights when we look at that one, but we've got a redesigned player profile, some challenges, some badges. I kind of like it. It's kind of cool. I think the biggest thing for any PC player is the new sort of optimization feeling for player and play, kind of a little bit like it's zoomed out a lot more. I don't know if I like it. I'm kind of adjusting to it, but I do appreciate that they're trying to improve the experience for people on PC. It definitely doesn't work on mobile because there would just not be enough space, but PC, especially the bigger screens, could be quite good. I'm still adapting. We'll see how it goes. Then we got the mechanic multiplier changes here for the champions. We're going to have a look at that in the highlights bit. What I really look for in these patch notes is these bullet point lists that get added to the bottom of the page, because these often contain some pretty impactful or kind of like sneaky little things that they put in the patch notes, and they can be quite important. So what we got here then, we've got a bit of an AI improvement so that on auto now champions will actually prioritize a Hydra head that is eating a champion. That's kind of obvious. I don't know why that wasn't there from the get-go. We got a little bit of a bug with Borgoth and Garrel. Not entirely sure, probably important, but not majorly game-breakingly changed. This is quite a big difference. They've converted Firal's passive, which obviously would give you stats and damage, into a unique passive. So it means you cannot have multiple Firals on your team. If you were doing this, you will find the damage output of your team is lower. Your numbers are not going to stack. So all they've done is they've made this passive unique. Means only one in the battle can be active at one time. We've got a couple of other things here. Fixed a bug. We got rid of the red dot on siege. That's kind of nice. Fixed a couple of missions and fixed a bug to sell artifacts. And they're also discontinuing one of the versions of iOS. I think they fixed the issue where the event dungeon wasn't giving a storage or something. I'm not too sure. But if you are doing the event dungeon, be careful about if you've got a full inbox. Really, what I want to look at is these highlights. You can see the player profile here. If you want to catch my stream tonight around about 8 or 9 o'clock UK time, I think, which is GMT +1 at the moment, I will show off my player profile on stream. We'll have a look at which badges I've been able to achieve so far. I bet if you put in the comments right now, I bet you can't guess which champion I have put as my favorite champion. I wonder how many people are going to get it. Then we have the UI overhaul here. As I said, it's very zoomed out. Even in battle, it's very zoomed out. I don't know if I like it. I'm still adjusting. But if you don't like it, you can turn it off in your player profile options in player and play. So the big thing I want to have a look at here is these modifications to these heroes. Let's have a little look here, see if we can zoom in. So Mezomal, we're just getting a damage increase on the basic. Okay, fine. And on the A2, we're getting a little bit of ignore defense, and we're getting a damage increase. I mean, Mezomal's main role is a damage dealer. She's pretty much designed to be like the mythical version of like a Phoenix or someone who could, like an E3, that kind of role. So more damage is always welcome. We'll have a look to see how much this multiplier is increased, because that's really going to qualify whether these changes are significant or not. In the alternate form here, we've got an AoE on the A1. That damage multiplier has been increased as well. Extra hits, really strong. And also the A2, just damage increase. So pretty much her modifications are damage. So it's really dependent on how much they've improved it. With Frolni, across the board in his base form, they've just uplifted his damage. They haven't changed anything else he does. Even on his A3, actually, A2 on his base form, all they've done is given him more damage. So again, how much of the multiplier has changed? That's going to be the question. Aphidius is the one that they've changed the most. Now, the main problem with Aphidius is that there's no real incentive to change to his alternate form, because it just doesn't do half as much of value, right? The alternate form is like a bit of a stun support type role, when really you just would rather stay in the base form. So that's been the biggest problem with Aphidius. So the real thing I'm looking for here is to see, is there any reason to use his alternate form? Is his alternate form now a viable alternative for the way that you would play him? Because generally with these mythical champions, you're going to play them in one of their forms. I don't pick Garrel to play her base and her alternate. I've got her either full damage or full tank. That's just kind of the way these things go. There are some champions you can switch, like Crixia, obviously you can switch to do the two different things, but that's because both of her roles are doing the same thing. One resets, one locks out. It's kind of the same thing. So what do we got here? So he used to just place a perfect veil on the ally with the highest attack. Now he's going to place it on himself and place a decreased defense and more damage. Great change. This is really nice. I didn't really feel like his base form was all that bad. I thought he was one of the better burners in the game. But obviously being a mythical champion, people want it to be a little bit more than just one of the best burners. They want a bit more oomph. So it's nice to have a decreased defense, a bit more damage, and he gets the perfect veil. The perfect veil on himself means that he's going to be very nice into a torment head solution because he's going to always have that veil on as long as he's A1. Then we get the A2. We still get the increased attack on all allies. We still get the increased duration of all debuffs on all allies by 1 turn, which is really strong. But now he's going to ignore 25% defense if they're not under burn, and if they are under burn, 50% ignore defense. Now, why is this important? 50 plus your area bonus of 20 is 70%. All you need is Savage Cruel, and now that A2 is doing true damage. It's still AoE, it's still going to suffer from the AoE penalty from Hydra, but it is now significantly stronger. This is probably going to, you're probably going to see a big number, even if the multiplier is not that big, because of this ignore defense. Then we got the A3, so it used to just AoE, then activate the burn. This is why I said he's one of the better burners, because he places a burn and activates it, which is really nice. Now he's going to do damage against debuffs. Really good. Just flat 25% more damage. Great. Instantly activates any HP burn, and that's unchanged. So basically, it's just more damage, which is pretty solid. And it's pretty easy damage, right? All of these things, it's quite easy to do it. Just put a debuff. Just have burn. He places the burn if you don't have a burn. Like, it's all very straightforward. It's not difficult to achieve. Now, here's what I really want to see. Have they fixed his alternate form? Okay, so he used to just place an increased accuracy on the ally with the lowest accuracy. It's pretty meh for an A1 on a mythical champion. Now he's going to place it on the ally with the highest accuracy and fill their turn meter by 10%. I don't really like that. When you think you've got the guy that used to place in Feeble, he just puts AoE increased defense. Why can't this guy just put AoE increased accuracy? If one guy is doing it, then this guy should do it. I don't really feel like that moves the needle at all. I feel like that's just another pointless thing. You're not really caring about this. Then we got attack all enemies, places a stun. This used to be pretty good, but I mean, there's plenty of champions in the game that can do this, right? Hoscarl can have a pretty good chance of doing an AoE stun. Place 2 continuous heals on all allies for 2 turns if there's no stun was placed. Now he just places 2 continuous heals. It's better. It's easier to engage. Is it going to make you want to switch form? Probably not. Then we get a provoke on all enemies. Again, there's a lot of AoE provokers in the game now. Ever since they moved to Hydra, we've got, pretty standard legendaries and epics that can do an AoE provoke. Also place strengthen on this champion and increase defense on all allies. They've just basically made it everyone gets strengthen and increased defense. What have they changed with this passive? He has a 100% chance of placing weaken and a 35% chance of placing stun on an attacker. They've just increased the chance by 5%. Honestly, I don't think they've solved the problem. You see this a lot when they do the mythical champions. Siegfried, when they buffed him, yes, they did do other mythicals. I know everyone was telling me that the content creators got it wrong. When they buffed Siegfried, we were all saying the main problem with Siegfried is you can't change form. So he's not a mythical champion. He was just a base champion unless you had this situation where he was the last one alive. And all they did really was make it so that his base form now was one of the strongest damage dealers in the game. They didn't really fix that core problem. I feel like they've done exactly the same thing here. You're still not really going to want to change. Yes, this build now is a little bit more straightforward, right? You always get strength and increased defense and continuous heals. It's a pretty good support build. I'm not going to use it probably in Hydra because I can find more valuable provokers. I can probably find more valuable support champions. I just don't feel like you would ever change to his alternate form, but it is better. It's a step in the right direction. I just don't think they've moved the needle enough. The damage, though, will be interesting to see because these are quite significant damage dealers. I always felt his base form was pretty good to begin with. So now we come to my favorite part of this. We are looking at the unofficial patch notes. What does that mean? When I get a new update, I take a look at the numbers behind the scenes that just exist in the game client, things that you know is there, it's happening when you attack, all the multipliers, and I have a look to see if there is anything interesting or anything new that they didn't really tell you about, and obviously report on it. Now, but obviously these are unofficial, so these are things that I'm reading from the game client. There's no sort of anything nefarious about it. We just look at what you would see, but it's just not showing to you in the game client. So the first thing I want to add here is some general changes. They've added a new variable called shield cap multiplier. Now, I don't exactly know what the implication is of this multiplier. It's been set to 4. So I'm not sure what this means. It could be just damage bonus. So maybe the Unity champion that does damage based on the shield value. It could be something related to this. It could be something related to shield growth. So kind of this is a situation where I'm going to throw it out to you guys to let me know if you notice anything weird going on with any shield-based teams that you were using, because this has been added to the game and it is set at 4. The other general thing to note is the issue with Thor's passive where he was activating on Giant Slayer or War Master or wasn't. That's been bug fixed as well, so Thor is now fixed to work exactly how he's meant to. So let's talk about Mezomal's base multiplier changes. We're going to see a very small move in Mezomal's damage. We've got a 3.8 that goes up to a 4.05, very, very small change. I don't know why it's a 0.05, but they have done this. And then the A2 on the base form has gone from 2.6 to 2.8, same number of hits. So what we can do now, of course, is with the multipliers and the way that we assess damage, it all goes through my equations, it goes through my formulas, a very complicated way of basically standardizing all of the damage builds. But what we can do is basically put every champion and every ability and every condition through this sort of script, and it will then pump out an estimation of damage, and then I can rank them equally, which means that the damage is equal to these other champions. It takes into account things like base stats, passive multipliers, stat growths, all of those things, so that it is a more realistic understanding of how strong someone is going to hit, because you can't just do 5 times attack is better than 4 times attack, because it depends on how much book damage do you get, what kind of passive do you have, how much ignore defense do you have, and that ignore defense is dependent on how much set. So I always give them 30% ignore defense from an artifact set kind of consideration. But what it isn't going to consider is things like debuffs on the target, unless the debuffs enable bonus damage. So when we're looking at, for example, Aphidius, we will estimate the damage based on HP burn being present, because that is how you would normally play him. That is the way we do these things. So we can see here with Mezomal, we've got a nice damage boost here. We've got a little bit of an improvement. He's the kind of the one you're looking at here is the arena rating. Arena is where it's going to matter, because that's where you will probably play with Mezomal the most. It's moved her up a little bit on the A1. Of all A1s in the game, it's about the 574th strongest A1 in the game right now. But we are talking very, very small adjustments. You are not going to materially notice this increasing damage. Next up, we have the A2. Now, this does have a little bit more of a material impact. You can see we've gone up from 188 to 81. And this is the value of that extra 15% ignore defense. That is the big difference you're seeing here. The extra 15% ignore defense is allowing you to jump up quite a lot. So why ignore defense still remains one of the most powerfulest abilities that you can have in the game. This isn't taking into account any area bonuses or anything like that. So obviously in Hydra, this would be a massive improvement as well. 15% is just on the cusp of true damage in some scenarios, because if you have Helm Smasher, that's 25%. If you have Merciless, that's 40%. If you go Merciless Cruel, you can get 40% plus 25%. You're at 65%. Add in the 15, that gets you to 80%, and there's your area bonus of 20%. So you're doing true damage. So if you ever see a champion that has got 15% ignore defense, if you set it up correctly, you can hit true damage on any ability that has an area bonus in the game. Hydra, Clan Boss, Doom Tower, Cintranos, all of these things account. So that is why you're seeing the big jump here. It's not because the multiplier was significantly different, because it only went up like 0.25. It's because the 15% ignore defense has really moved the needle. So you might not notice the damage potentially, but it is quite a significant increase. On an alternate, we see a kind of a similar thing. It's not moved up a lot. It's very, very small gains again. So we've got a very small increase. You know, it's moved up about 20 ranks in arena. Not bad. And a very small increase here on the A2, right? So we're looking at a pretty strong A1 base for an AoE. You got to remember, this is an AoE A1. It's a pretty strong AoE A1 on the alternate. Still a great champion. This is why Hydra is heavily punished, because it is AoE, so you take a penalty for damage on AoE. And again, when we're looking here, this is AoE. Hydra is pretty weak, but in arena is quite good. So overall, is she valid in arena? I don't think she's any more like stronger. She's not all of a sudden like the best champion like Siegfried was. We're not seeing that kind of movement. But if you were using her before, you'll find probably a little bit more success rate because of that extra ignore defense. Remember that also block revives, so that's the big deal here. Next up, we're looking at Frolni. Frolni, we are seeing quite a big increase in multipliers. It's always with HP, it's kind of hard to understand how much of an implication of a change is because we're dealing with decimal numbers, because obviously if you had 100% of your HP, you're going to do crazy amounts of damage. But we can see the A2, we have moved up 0.1. That is a big increase of damage. This is a major, major multiplier change. So we're going to see some pretty big damage number changes here probably. But HP based is always going to suffer from the fact there is no HP buff. And that is the thing to take into account. You can't increase HP like you can increase attack or defense. So on an A1, you can see it is quite weak. Remains to be quite weak on the A1, but it has moved up a little bit. We can see we've gone from about 35,000 to 45,000. So that has moved it up into the average overall rather than the weak to a little bit of average. That is where it's moved to. So it has moved the needle, but it's not moved the needle in a situation where you're now going to be like, this is the best champion in the game. On the A2, however, this thing whacks. It is strong, this A2. It is going to do quite a lot of damage. It is in the top 50 of Arena nearly, and in early to end game content, the main difference between this early to late game is defense numbers. You can see that it's going to do pretty good damage, but it is single target. So in a clan boss setting, pretty good. In a Hydra setting, probably also pretty good. Pretty good damage numbers. You know, we're almost like doubling. You can see we've gone from 145 in Arena to 56. That's a big, big jump. From the A3, again, it's a little bit like the A1. It's kind of moved it from this like kind of weak, strong average. It's now like godlike in Arena, but it's a bit, you know, average in other places. On his alternate A1, it is unchanged. However, the A2 has seen a little bit of an increase. I don't really know why we got 0.31. It's a bit weird. You could have just done 0.3. I do like to round these things. So it's a little bit of a defense number increase. So you'll see that, again, it's a very small adjustment here, but it just moves it up a little bit on the rankings. It's gone from like 192 to 168. It's basically a good overall change. Now, I will say, where does this really change Frolni? I feel like it's a bit like Mezomal. If you were using him in Arena already, you're going to find he's just a little bit more consistent. The A2 change on the base is quite strong. That's a big increase. We're talking he's jumped a number of ranks. So I'd say I never really thought he needed more damage boosting because I faced a couple of Frolnis in Arena and I've got whacked by this dwarf. He can absolutely destroy you. So I think Frolni is in a very good place. If you've got him, he's worth building for Arena. You'll be surprised by how much value and success you can get out of him. Is he the best damage dealer in the game like Siegfried is and those other big hitters? No. Is he going to be able to do a job? Absolutely for you. Now let's get to the big changes. Aphidius, in my opinion, on his base form has gone up quite a lot. This is very interesting changes. We can see his A1 not so much. His A1's quite small, but the A2 has gone up nearly 25%. It's gone from 3.2 to 4, and the A3 has gone up to 4. This is in addition to that 0.5 increase, the 50% more ignore defense on HP burn. Get ready for some big number changes here. On the A1, it's a little bit of an increase. Again, we're moving now from being mostly godlike with a little bit of strongs on the lower end to being a little bit more comfortable in the godlike region. For context, the godlike is like the top 15% of all abilities in the game. It kind of goes godlike and distributes. I think it's like top 15, top 40, top 60, and then everything else. That's kind of like the way that it breaks it down. I can't remember exactly how I split it, but that's roughly how it distributes. So when you see godlike, it means it's one of the top 15% best abilities in the game. So you can see here it's moved a little bit, but it's not really like we've got 100 places, well, not even 100 places, like 50 places on Clan Boss. It's about 40 places. Pretty okay, but nothing crazy. But it's a single target, so it's a pretty solid A1 single target. Now for the A2, we're going to start seeing some big jumps. You can see we've gone from strong to average to godlike to average. It's still average in Hydra, which you would be disappointed with because HP burn in Hydra is the best place. This doesn't take into account the damage from HP burn, but what this is going to do is show you the value of that AoE penalty that you're going to face in Hydra, right? You're facing this penalty of AoE in Hydra. It really hurts the damage, but it's still pretty good in Arena, 90,000. It's nowhere near a massive nuker in Arena, but it's quite a big jump. We're moving him almost double the strength in terms of ranks here, right? He's jumped a lot of ranks. Then we have the A3. The A3 has also jumped quite a lot, but it's still going to suffer from the AoE penalty, but now it is way stronger in Hydra. We're looking at 1190 to 627. A lot of his damage is going to come from activating HP burns, but this is quite strong. He's potentially a consideration for an arena nuker here. 90 is a very strong thing. If you can avoid polymorph and other things that he will activate from placing the burn, it's quite strong. Very good A1 clan boss. Overall, again, it's one of those things where I'm trying to say I don't think his damage was ever the problem. It's nice that he has more damage. It was his alternate form. I don't know if they've moved the needle for the alternate form. I feel like, again, all of these modifications are not going to suddenly go, okay, now I'm going to start using them. If you were already using them, you welcome the change. It makes it feel good. They're probably feeling quite strong right now. But if you are thinking, now that they've done it, should I start using it? I don't know if these modifications are going to make you all of a sudden super excited like we were when Siegfried got changed. You know, if you had Siegfried, now you're like, this guy is absolutely wrecking arena. We'll have to see. Maybe in comments you can let me know, have you decided to start using one of these mythicals that you didn't want to use because they were weak, and now they're stronger? So just before I end the video, I wanted to do a quick spreadsheet analysis so you can quickly see on a single image exactly how much change these multipliers have had for these champions. We've got Aphidius, we've got Frolni, and we've got Mezomal logged up here. All of the changes to the multipliers that affect them. So we can see the A3 on Aphidius is quite a big improvement. We're talking 43%, and for Frolni's A2, 42%. His A2 has gone up 25%, and his A1 has gone up 28%. When you see these linear numbers, it means that my equation is pretty much working. The only difference is going to be ignore defense. It's going to change the numbers depending on what we're fighting. But pretty much you can see that the equations are showing good consistency. That means that the linear nature of my equations are pretty accurate, which is good to see. We've got 43% and 42, 28%. But like as you see, like the Aphidius A1, it's a really small change. The Mezomal multipliers, A2 on the base form has had quite a jump, 29% on the late game. Really looking in arena, 32% on the A2 is a good increase. That's what I'm saying. If you weren't using her in arena, she's probably the one that I would say is probably interesting to use in arena because of the block revive capabilities. This is a nice way to just show that she is stronger, but none of these are like 100% more damaging. And so it really comes down to, whilst we've seen big percentage increases, are those increases now bringing them up into a tier that is on the par with your people like your 1% HP Leorises, your Jorgids, your mythical champions like Lazarius. We've also got mythical champions in there, the one that I can't remember, one of the names that is lost to me. Siegfried, don't know why I lost that name. We've been talking about Siegfried all this run. They're so much higher. So even though these guys have moved up 40%, they're still like 50% below their damage potential and the utility that they bring. So that's really what you've got to take into account. Yes, I'm getting 32% more damage, but if the other guy's doing like 200,000, then it's still way off the mark. That's where I'm going to leave it to you. I don't really think any of these buffs are definitively amazing. I'm going to shake up the meta, but they kind of like solidify the mythical champions in the role that they were already doing, and it probably just helps people who were using them to use them a little bit more efficiently and effectively. And that is the end of the patch notes. So thanks very much for watching. As always, if you like this type of content, make sure you hit the thumbs up and the like button. This tells me all the time that you want to keep seeing these patch notes that come out every month from Raid Shadow Legends. I'll catch you guys in the next video.